Wonderful. And thank you for that. So thanks for coming today. I came to Nigeria August of last year. I've been loving it very much. And since I have been here, I've just really dived into the sights and sounds of this beautiful, wonderful country. And I'm so appreciative to work with a stellar team both in Abuja and Lagos, those in our consulate in Lagos on the public diplomacy team. So I thought I would just share a little bit about myself in terms of, I know you maybe saw my bio, I listed the countries I've been in alphabetically, but I thought it might be of interest just to share little tidbits, snippets, vignettes from these 23 years that I've been in the United States Foreign Service. And I came when I arrived, I learned of this series, Speak with a Diplomat, and I know various topics are addressed. But what one overall thing about this series, Speak with a Diplomat, is I hope those who may be repeat patrons that have attended a few of these, I hope they see that U.S. diplomats, we are Americans, and we're people too. We're humans just like you, and we're no better. We're no worse. We are humans. So think of me as just a regular guy. At least that's how I like to be thought of. And that I think that comes a little bit from my personal upbringing in the United States. It's considered a society in the United States that strives towards egalitarianism. And to me, that's a very important principle about the ideals of the United States, how we are all equal. So this is my second career. My first career was in corporate communications at a computer company, pre-internet, if any of you remember back that far. And but I'd done some traveling in my youth, and I still wanted to get back overseas. So I learned of the Foreign Service. But to get back overseas immediately, I signed on to be a US government contractor, and they put me to work at our US Embassy in Moscow, Russia in the 1990s. There they were implementing an in-country refugee program for people of the former Soviet Union that had undergone persecution by the authorities, either due to their nationality or due to their religion. It was a special refugee program, one that has since long ago sunsetted. So that got me back overseas. I, of course, loved it. And I said to myself, now that I'm no longer in the corporate world, I think the United States Foreign Service would be a good fit for me. So I got married in the 90s to my wife, and she's the one who decided to take the test. It's a testing process for the Foreign Service before I did. So she took it and she passed it. And so I actually got to, after the 90s, go back with her on her first assignment in the year 2000. And because she and I both speak Russian, they sent her as her first assignment to Russia, to Moscow. So I was very excited to go back to Moscow. And while I was there, that's when in the embassy itself, I took the Foreign Service written exam, passed it, and it's a battery of tests. There's oral examinations, all that. So long story short, after my wife's first assignment in Moscow, Russia, I peeled off, and my first own assignment was Algeria in Northern Africa. And so as I tick these places off, I'll just share, like I said, memories that come to the forefront of my mind and what I appreciated about that place. So in Algeria, also loved very much the people, the countryside. They were just getting over a lot of terrorism in the 1990s. So by the time I was there in the year 2002, that had gotten under control. And I worked in consular because we do all sorts of jobs in the Foreign Service. And that was my first exposure to working with a team from another country. So just like here, you don't see him on camera. We have Joe off to the side here. He's one of our team members. He is Nigerian in Algeria. There was an Algerian staff, and that's a key theme in any American Foreign Service officer's career is our relationship with the local staff, because I call it a symbiotic relationship. To do my job, we rely on them, and for them to do their job, they rely on us. So the relying on us part is just to crystallize it would be U.S. policy. So I am responsible for knowing current U.S. policy, which changes over the years. And so in Algeria, I got to implement consular policy with respect to visa work, American citizen services. In that case, on the American citizen services side, there was a bunch of European diplomats who were kidnapped in southern Algeria, one of whom was an American citizen. So I worked that case very closely, and saw the eventual release of all those people who were abducted. So that was an exciting first tour for me. And another commonality in all these places I'm going to take off to you is the fact that every place I've gone, I've just been blown away by how good the food is and the music. So those two things are two items in my life that I get really excited about. It's food and music. So every country has their own style of music. Nigeria certainly does. So moving on, I went back to Washington, D.C. so I could be with my wife. And I did an assignment there as a political desk officer for the country of Moldova. And just very briefly talking about Moldova, the desk officers, the political economic desk officers, they go on familiarization trips to the country they cover. So there's an embassy in a U.S. embassy in most countries, and there was and still is in Chisinau, Moldova. So I got to go there, and I even got to go to a tiny sliver of that country that's a breakaway region that had a civil war right after the breakup of the Soviet Union. It's called Transnistria. So I got to go over there. I got permission to spend a day there and meet people on that side of the river. So that was very fascinating. But in DC, my nickname for the Washington DC jobs are the paper factory. That's what I call it. So just tons and tons of writing and reports, and really missed being overseas. So fortunately, my wife and I got to go back overseas after our Washington DC assignments, and that was to the country of Burma. And to this day, we still call it Burma for our policy reasons, due to an unrecognized junta, as it's called, a dictatorial military government that controls that country. They call themselves Myanmar, which is right next to India and Bangladesh. So that was a crucible for me, that assignment. I did another consular job there. I was the chief. It was the first time I was the chief of a department. And when there's a national crisis in any country, our highest responsibility, for regardless if you're a political officer, an economic officer, a public diplomacy officer, which I am, our highest responsibility is the safety and welfare of American citizens who are not U.S. government, but who are in that country. They could be expatriates, they could be dual nationals, anything, but it's our highest responsibility. Still is. And so in Burma, from the consular perspective, and with my being a consular chief, there were two major incidences or crises that occurred. One was the first political uprising in Burma since prior 20 years of suppression. And it was started by peaceful Buddhist monk processions decrying the poverty of the country and the inability of the people to feed their families. And the families were following them, and then they grew in mass. And that was a place where I saw how bad political oppression can be when it leads to violence by authorities towards its own citizens. So there was a bloody crackdown, and it was suppressed. Excuse me. Bringing up not good memories, but they successfully put that uprising down, which was peaceful, and then sadly, about 9 months later, the country got hit by a massive hurricane, a cyclone, and that hit the southern delta of Burma. It killed tens of thousands of people. And then anytime you have something huge like that, that's a natural catastrophe, there are follow-on health effects where people die from those. So again, from the American citizen perspective, those residing in Burma at the time, I worked those two huge natural crises during those years. And I learned a ton. So after Burma, my wife and I decided we needed a break, and not that Washington, D.C. is a break, but we decided to go back to Washington, D.C. And it was there, I'd been, when you enter the Foreign Service, you're required to pick a specialty. So when I first entered in 2002, I said, I will be a public diplomacy officer. So all those initial years, I was what's called out of cone. So I decided to go back to Washington, D.C. and do my first public diplomacy job as what's called a PD, public diplomacy desk officer. And I covered support for our public diplomacy sections in all of Western Europe at the time. And I got to deal from that perch with some very interesting things to support our colleagues, our public diplomacy colleagues out in the field, and everything that they do. And so it was a very good first exposure for me, one of which was with the cultural affairs officer, the cultural attaché in Italy. We set up a public-private partnership with a Italian-American foundation that was an NGO that wanted to help with the aftermath of a big earthquake, which occurred in 2007 or 2008, I believe. And that was in L'Aquila, Italy. So that was, again, very great professional experience in learning the mechanics of setting up a public-private partnership. So I'll move on a little quicker pace here now that we got past Burma. So from there, my wife and I, we went to India. I spent 3 years there. Fabulous, wonderful, marvelous India. One of the world's or the world's largest democracy population-wise, and with all its flaws and foibles, India seems to make it work. And I I just remember how busy India was. I was in New Delhi, and it seemed like every 2 weeks there was a big Washington visitor that came out. So that was my first assignment in India, where I learned, oh, you know, we need to pause our day jobs and support our Washington colleagues, particularly when they're VIPs or VVIPs who come out. So did a lot of those. Secretary of State came out to India a lot. Other agency heads like Department of Commerce secretary, and we had one vice president of the United States visit. Um, President of the United States goes there from time to time, but during my tenure, only the vice president. It was actually Joe Biden when he was vice president that we supported him. Um, so food, absolutely amazing. I love Indian food, and the music is out of this world there. So from there, I was going to go to Pakistan, but that's one thing I have I'm very good with in my foreign service is being flexible, just how things can change. So that assignment to Pakistan didn't work out, so I went to Turkmenistan. So I went to another like officially declared like dictatorship country, and I was there for a few months, and it was the first time I was a public affairs officer. I learned how to do public diplomacy work in challenging environments, particularly in an authoritarian dictatorial country like Turkmenistan is. And one thing that I got first exposure to is how invaluable American spaces are. We had American spaces in Turkmenistan, and we had a big American center in the capital, off campus from the embassy even. That was in Ashgabat. And that was those were little islands of uh, open communication, openness, transparency, learning, free internet, which was highly restricted by the Turkmen government. But we had good bandwidth and a good embassy conduit for internet that was permitted by the host government for patrons to come in and use our American spaces. And the reason why that was an abbreviated tour is because I was called to Afghanistan to what's called a now position. They needed someone immediately. So I hopped from Turkmenistan to Afghanistan, and I did a lot of work in strategic communications, but that was with respect to grants. And one thing that we helped the Afghan government do through a grant was give them training on strategic communications. So we brought over advisors and got them better at talking with the people, because as you all know, an important democratic principle in any democracy is ability for the government not only to be accountable to the people, but also to communicate with the people and be open, transparent, and let them know what's going on inside the government that the people elected. So that the idea of public servants are indeed servants to public. And so that was an exciting grant. Fortunately, it was only 1 year. In the war was still going on, so that was as they call it, a lockdown embassy, and so our movements outside of the giant perimeter were very restricted. So after a while, you get what's called the little cabin fever. From there, I went to Cameroon, and I was a public affairs officer there, and that that's where I learned how to. There's a cliche in the foreign service called well, doing less with more, or doing more with less. And I really had to do that because I was understaffed with officers, that sometimes it's hard to fill certain slots because there's places where Washington D.C. puts officers where let's say it's a higher profile country. And so my first year, I was the only officer, chief of section. And what saved me back to the locally employed staff were the Cameroonian staff that I worked with. And one thing I got to know very quickly when I started doing public diplomacy work, India being the first place, which was, oh yeah, I didn't mention in India, but I did a media job there, and but as a public affairs officer in Cameroon, uh, I looked to the specialist, the senior locally employed staff members, and I talked with them that first year, and I said, "Look, I can't do it all, so I'm empowering you. I am delegating. I will treat you as colleagues, and just keep reporting up to me, so I stay aware of what's going on. But I will, I'm not by nature a micromanager, but I am here with you." And one thing about Cameroon that I love with working with my locally employed staff team there was they have a saying that's said all over the country. They say it in French and in English. So in French, it's "on est ensemble." And in English, when they say it in English, is "we are together." And they would say that a lot at the end of giving public remarks, or just in a meeting or whatever. And it's a reminder that we're all in this together. And that's something that fun souvenir that I kept with me from Cameroon. Again, food was amazing there. And from Cameroon, I went to Belarus. And Belarus was supposed to be my less active assignment. I leading up to my arrival there was it was the first Trump administration. There was very much warming relations going on with Belarus, which is right next to Ukraine and Russia. And that's good for the United States to have good relations with all countries of the former Soviet Union. So the president of Belarus has a nickname, and you don't hear it so often anymore, but you used to hear it all the time: the last dictator in Europe, Mr. Lukashenko. And so it was really good that we were having warming relations. Um, and they were also getting like initial association agreements with the European Union. So it's the right trajectory. And a week after I arrived were the scheduled presidential elections. And amazingly, the first time in a decade or two, there was an opposition candidate who was extremely popular. And her name was Svetlana Tsikhanouskaya. Uh, and it looked like she had won based on informal exit polls that the people themselves did. Um, well, that was a case where the president of Belarus, Lukashenko, decided, no, I actually won. So he came out that evening, or his electoral commission came out that evening and announced that he had actually won by a landslide. So in all my conversations with Belarusians, they said, look, we know that he always fudges the results of winning every time there's an election, but it's usually by a margin of 5–10%. But this time, it was a bridge too far for most Belarusians. He claimed it by winning by a margin of 20%, let's say. So what that did was it sparked people that same evening. Again, this is a week after I arrived. People poured into the streets, and they were just fed up. And they began a campaign of a solid 5.5 months of nonstop peaceful protests. The protesters were never violent. And they were protesting, they wanted free and fair elections, and they wanted electoral reform, and those kinds of basic things that the people felt that they did not get from the election that had just occurred. So another sad case of when the winter months set in, very Arctic winters there. Um, that's when I call them knocks on the door happen in the middle of the night, because this day and age with all of this facial recognition technology, the authorities there, security forces were able to identify not just leaders of the protests, but also the participants. So they rounded up a lot of people those very cold winter months and put them in jail. So come spring of that, I think that was spring of 2021. That's when the protests had petered out. They didn't come back on the streets because a good chunk were in jail. And then the president of that country completely wiped out all non-governmental organizations, completely stopped all independent media in Belarus. Also very tragic. So that experience was another crucible for me in Belarus, and it made me really appreciate and cherish um, the ideals of democracy and how important they are, and how important it is for all citizens in any democracy to not be apathetic, and to at least try to maintain it. Because in countries, the odds were stacked against the Belarusians because they were already in a dictatorship. And it's hard to overcome that. It's hard to overcome security forces. But when you have a democracy, it made me cherish it with all my heart, and the freedoms that I enjoy from my own country. And from Belarus, I went to Pakistan in Karachi, and I know I'm going a little bit long, so I'll just say about Pakistan. My 2 years there, uh, it was just absolutely awesome. Another great team. Karachi itself was a full lockdown post because of um, terrorist security threats against Americans. Um, Islamabad had a little bit more liberties in going out. So I would do lots of public diplomacy work as the public affairs officer of the consulate, just as we have a public affairs officer and public diplomacy team in Lagos. So we would go out with embassy motor pool support, armored cars, all that. But go to venues, and we would have public diplomacy events and visit partners, have meetings in places that were considered secure. So going back to my takeaways from Algeria, my very first assignment, I learned how to work within the confines of a challenging work environment. Algeria, Burma. So I harken back to those lessons: how to get things done, how to reach people, how to connect with people in those challenging environments. Pakistanis, lovely, wonderful, hospitable people. And my dream is to, when I retire, to go back as a tourist and rent a car and drive around and get to go see all the city markets that I was not allowed to get out and walk around in myself. But that's a retirement bucket list item. And then from Pakistan, here I am, me voilà, as the French say. Here I am in Nigeria, loving every minute of it. I came back because I had such a good experience in Cameroon. I wanted to come back to West Africa because I know how warm and open and loving many West Africans are, including Nigerians. So I'm here as the country public diplomacy counselor, responsible for like strategic outreach to Nigerians and certain audiences within youth groups, let's say, because one thing we want to do is work with youth, many of whom will be let's say tomorrow's leaders of one's country, in this case Nigeria. And we in public diplomacy, that's in terms of defining what is public diplomacy. We think of it as opportunities to engage directly with the people as U.S. government officials. Not just me, but my boss. I have an ambassador. I have a deputy chief of mission. I have, sometimes we even get out our economic or political colleagues for events. And as I said at the very beginning, to connect and show that, we are humans too. We are with you. We are together. And also we want to have mutual understanding of what our policies are. And if you like them, great. If you don't like them, in terms of being critical thinking individuals, people reject our policies overseas. No one is forced from us, but we do share because we feel it's important to get out accurate information, and working with individuals, working with groups on all sorts of programs such as exchanges, short exchanges, longer exchanges, some of which are U.S. government scholarships. The flagship, the one that's been around for several decades, Fulbright, but there are many others, and we are here to connect. So I'm going to end there just by saying that it's been speaking of music, and my staff knows this, I am a Beatles fan. Their music has stood the test of time, and one of their songs on one of their last albums was "The Long and Winding Road." So for me, my career thus far has been a long and winding road. I've taken only the best from all these places I've been, the hundreds, if not thousands of people I've interacted with. And it has professionally developed me and developed me as a person too. So I will stop there, and we can go to a Q&A portion. Joe, or Awandawana.
Yes, thank you so much, Lee, for sharing that wonderful journey with us. It's been 23 years of your work journey so far, and seriously, we're incredibly very proud to have you on our program today, giving the insight you've been able to share across different countries with our audience today. And I believe that they've learned one or two things from your experience. And thank you so much for being on our program. I'll quickly, meanwhile, let me ask our audience to start putting their questions together for Lee. Someone please kindly check our audience on Facebook if they also have questions and all of that. I think I will take the first question, which is, what is the role of cultural exchanges in public diplomacy efforts?
Okay. Thank you for the person that asked that question. Cultural exchange programs, you can think of it this way. Public diplomacy, we call them tools. Tools or equipment, can be metaphorical, could be physical equipment that we need and use to connect with people. So we have a media team. Nowadays, they call it a strategic communications team. We do that largely interacting with publics via the traditional media and social media, and hybrid. This is a hybrid event we're in right now. And the other side of the house would, can be cultural exchange. There's different names for it. There's working with emerging voices, working with established opinion leaders. And these exchanges, specifically like where we might, let's take one of many examples is the International Visitor Leadership Program. So the purpose of that is we have a home bureau called the Bureau of Education Cultural Affairs, and they offer so many slots per year to all embassies and all public diplomacy sections that we are responsible for to identify what every ambassador has priorities, and aligned with Washington, D.C. priorities. So, for instance, if we want to promote greater commercial ties with country X, and so we might, when we get our slots that we are allotted for the International Visitor Leadership Program, they have different themes of these programs. And one might be doing business with the United States. So then the public diplomacy section will work with our colleagues within the embassy outside of my office and say, hey, let's get some nominees from your contacts, because they have deep contacts, let's say, in the business community. And so they'll come up with some names, there'll be discussion, there'll be what's called an interagency vote within an embassy. And then it's so when there's consensus, there will be, one or two people that will be nominated to go on that special program to the United States for 2 to 3 weeks to learn about doing business with the United States. So there's a very specific purpose to have a mutually beneficial program that enhances knowledge, not just for the selectees, the local people that were selected, but also the Americans, because it's during that 3 weeks, they have multiple meetings, they get to know a lot of Americans in their fields. And so those we send act as, let's say, informal ambassadors for your own country, because we believe in the United States government that it's that which has made the United States great has been let's say the legal migrants that came and became citizens and contributed to the overall strength of the country. So and the more exposure that Americans have to, not just from Nigerians, but from Mongolians, from German people, from Burmese, then when they go on these programs, either short ones or longer ones, the Americans get to know them and get to see different perspectives. And again, always take away the good when you have these interactions and discard what you don't agree with. So cultural exchanges is just, again, back to connection. We want to connect with people and have stronger ties with, in this case, US-Nigeria relations. Over.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Just another question before I move on to our audience to see if they have questions for you. Give the number of years you have also spent as a diplomat. What is that has been the most challenging aspect of public diplomacy?
Well, that's a good question. In terms of public diplomacy work, I would say there are challenges to not just share information so people understand better, but up the gradation of what we're trying to do in public diplomacy is to get people to understand and even accept a U.S. policy that is in the mutual interest of our two countries. So it's not always easy to change minds. And again, like I said at the beginning, we don't compel people. We discuss, and through discussion, and we have lots of forums for discussions. Then you can come to at times not just mutual understanding, but also those that were maybe completely on the other side of an issue might just be convinced. It's like, okay, I see your points. I'm going to think about it further, or you know what, I actually agree with you now that I've heard all the arguments. So That can be challenging at times. But beyond that, one reason I was happy to get into public diplomacy is, uh, despite challenges, like I mentioned, working in authoritarian countries, it's harder to get things done. But even there, the joy that I get from my job is working with people, my own team, and also the participants of our programs. Because not always, but most of the time, people that participate in our programs are the cream of the cream. And so it's just really fun and exciting for me, and personally, mentally enriching for me to talk with people who are smart and have great knowledge about, it could be anything in the arts, it could be in music, it could be in politics, economics, but just to learn from them is such an enriching experience for me. Over.
Thank you very much. For our participants across our network for American Spaces, please, if you have a question, use a virtual hand, but I think I have a question in the chat box. So I take this from American Corner Calabar. The question is, how have you navigated shift in foreign policies resulting from changes in administration? And in what ways have this transition impacted your diplomatic work over the years?
Okay, so that's a good question. And I had, over the years, over these 23 years, given this thought, and I look at it as like a band, as a strip. So you have the upper and you have the lower, but it is a band. And so one of the cliches is all politics are local. So when we have an administration in our executive branch, foreign policy emanates from like their political platforms. I mean, every country does it, in terms of like who currently, um, let's say, works on the most foreign policy. Uh, and just to remind, in the United States, foreign policy is not the exclusive domain of the executive branch. Congress is very active in foreign policy, and as a matter of fact, we receive congressional delegations all the time at embassies and work with our congressional representatives on what they're trying to aim and achieve. So as foreign service officers, the one key theme that here's an acronym for you, FSOs, Foreign Service Officers. One thing we all have in common when we're very first hired is you are apolitical. So let's say close to 100% of the time, we are never asked to do anything of a political nature. Foreign policy, back to the band, I see it as, well, if there's like, let's say, a conservative government or a more liberal government in the United States, within that band, it can go, up towards one upper end or towards a lower end. And I've seen those fluctuations in my time in the Foreign Service. So I don't view them as shifts. I view them as just different emphases. And I mean, you read the newspapers like I do. So, I mean, you see what the current administration is emphasizing. You've seen what the past administration emphasized when it comes to foreign policy. For instance, the current administration is putting a premium emphasis on commercial diplomacy, and that has always been there. And there, at the bigger missions, like there are in Nigeria, there's what's called the Foreign Commercial Service Office and staff to promote U.S. businesses. That's always been there. But in the limelight, or what an executive branch president of the United States emphasizes, currently is that U.S. commercial diplomacy, and when it comes to foreign policy. Past administrations have put a higher premium in different areas. Let's say supporting democratic principles around the world. So, do we support democratic principles right now under the current administration? Absolutely, yes. It's just there are things that are being emphasized more heavily. So again, I'm back to that band, and thanks to our own democratic guardrails that we have in the United States government, we stay within those bands. So over.
Thank you. All right, let's take a question from Meduguri. Meduguri, please unmute and ask your question.
Hello and good morning. Thank you very much, sir. My question is, how do you see cultural exchange and mutual understanding contributing to addressing global challenges such as conflict resolution, economic development, and what role do you believe as a diplomat like yourself can play in fostering these efforts? Thank you, sir.
Sure. Thank you.
Have you gotten my
So
question?
I got you. So
Thank you.
I addressed the cultural exchanges bit a little bit earlier. I can just kind of focus on let's say what can public diplomacy do to help with the more prickly issues such as conflict resolution. So at a number of posts I've been in, when we've had a discretionary budget, we've put together like roundtables. Sometimes it's called track 2 diplomacy, working the non-government side, coming up with recommendations for its own government. If there's an issue that's is important to them, so we help facilitate those things, or like roundtables for the two sides to talk to each other, and like we were there and act as a just a facilitator of the discussion. I've done a few of those. Again, government officials with the NGO community, and in these things, the United States does not take sides, and that's I saw that in particular in Cameroon. It was very difficult for a lot of people in the public to understand that we were not there to take sides in that conflict, which is still ongoing in Cameroon. But we are there to help facilitate discussions that will lead to peace. So we do that through public diplomacy. We utilize ambassadors for that, sometimes by an ambassador's initiative, sometimes by I call myself working level initiative. We might create a special international visitor leadership program comprised of a mixture. In fact, we're working on right now, comprised of a mixture of both government and non-government folks. I throw in a journalist or two in the mix. Go to the United States to see what are the Americans doing about this prickly issue X, Y, or Z, and that's something that again it takes time to to pull all the levers with our DC colleagues and within our team here. A lot of preparatory time, but the end result tends to be, to use that as an example, when they come back from that particular exchange program, that's a specialized one, we have debrief, like, well, what are your takeaways? What did you like? What did you not like? And many of them say, oh, well, you are trying, the Americans in this sector are trying to tackle this issue in this way. I'd never thought of that before. I'm going to go back to my own bosses within the government or with my own, NGO community and talk more about this particular aspect that the Americans found effective. So that's just one of many examples how cultural exchanges can effectuate change, can influence. But again, take it or leave it. I mean, we do not compel people to do things the American way. But we do overseas. We want to share and give what we think has helped us and might help you in terms of whatever issues identified. So I'll leave it at that.
All right, thank you so much, Lee. So we'll take a question. I think there are two questions from American Center Lagos. So we'll take the two questions. Probably we can respond to them at the same time. One is, what do you love most about your career, and how were you able to adapt to different cultures as a diplomat? The second one is, what do you love most about Nigerian culture? What is your favorite Nigerian food? Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Anduana. So the first one I love most about this career that I've been in is still the same for when I very first started, which is just the massive opportunities that I've had, not just to go and live in another country, but to get to know its people and connect with them in meaningful ways. So that has just been a joy for me within the State Department. And also in terms of like mutually sharing, I get to share my culture with them. And so when it comes to the personal part of it, that has just been something that's brought me a lot of joy over the past 23 years. Nigeria, food-wise, there's so much. I've tried a lot of Nigerian food. I like it all. Let me just give a commonality. Something that I love when it comes to food is like when it's hot and spicy. So that has not disappointed me at all in Nigeria. There's a lot of hot, there's a lot of spice, even in just beef stew that I eat sometimes. And the hotter the spicier, the better. I do like the way you all prepare your plantains. So I think you got a little bit one up on the Cameroonians in that regard. It's good there, but I like it a little better here, how the plantains are prepared. So back to you, Anduana.
All right, thank you. Let's get a question from Enugu, Window on America. Enugu, please unmute and ask your questions.
Okay. Come close to you. Just speak up. Yeah, I can hear you.
So my question is, are there any parts in Nigeria you cannot visit? Like you have said that you have visited so many countries, and in Nigeria you have only centered on Abuja and Lagos. So are there other states in Nigeria you cannot visit?
All right, there's a second question, sir. Should we proceed?
Yes, proceed quickly.
All right, so in your 20 plus years of diplomacy, what key lessons can Mr. Lee give out to youth, in terms of communication and relating with people? Because as a diplomat, he has interacted with people of different culture, diverse ethnic backgrounds and everything. So what can we as young people pick from this to foster and to help our communication skills? That's all. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Over to you, Lee.
Okay, the first question. Yeah, there are some restricted areas, but when we need to go to them, we work closely with our security office, and we go. So since I've been here, my team, with or without public diplomacy officers, members of my team, including Anduana, who's on screen right now, we send them off to all over Nigeria. Myself should be going to Benue for the first time in when is it? Yeah, middle of June is when that's scheduled for. So looking forward to that very, very much. In public diplomacy, that's another of many benefits is our ability to get out the capital or the economic heart, let's say in the case of Lagos, and just get out and see how ordinary Nigerians live, think, and feel. And I think that's a good segue to the next question. Key lessons to youth in relating with people. So I'll share a couple of aphorisms with you. And this is nothing profound. And youth have these skills, but the trick is to employ them 100% of the time, not just in your professional life, but in your private life too. And that's to be kind. Sounds simple, but it's much harder to do than you think. 100% of the time, be kind, because in your communications, if you are kind and empathetic and compassionate, you connect so much more easily with other people, particularly people that you meet for the first time. So not just be kind, but 100% of the time, personally and professionally. And the other is related to that, caring is sharing. So, be generous with in your communications, but also in your personal warmth, and you will connect and communicate with people so much better if they know that you actually care about them authentically. And that's my my last piece of advice in your communications throughout your life is be authentic. Don't be a phony. But I was just thinking about a book that many of us Americans read in high school called Catcher in the Rye, written by an author, J.D. Salinger. And it gets into a lot of things, but the main character, he's going through what some call teenage angst. And he thinks there's just so much phoniness in the adult world, and that may or may not be. But in the book, he gets a good piece of advice from one of his teachers, which is essentially, look, yeah, the world is a difficult place, very difficult. It's filled with a lot of issues, problems, sadness. Pretty much anything you can think of. But be authentic and learn from people before you that went through that, the lessons they learned, how to work through those issues, and do one's best. And I'll just end on this. This is the famous story. Many of you might know it. I'm getting the sense it might be an international story, but I love it because to me it's a good like guiding light for me, which is let's say a father and a daughter. They're walking along the beach. It was the day after a big storm, and the night before the storm washed up just thousands of starfish. And they have to survive in the water. And here they are dying on the beach. And so as they're walking along the beach, the daughter, she picks up one starfish, throws it back in the ocean. Next one, throws it back in the ocean. And dad says, why are you doing that? You see the thousands that got washed up. And, what difference does it make? And she picked up the next one, looked at her dad and said, yeah, but it matters to this one. She throws it back in the ocean. So one does what one can. and in the sometimes referred to as the theater of the absurd that this life is. But enjoy it and be authentic, care and share and be kind. So that's my advice.
All right. Thank you so much, Lee. Like our program is an hour program. We have informed the boss that we're only going to take 1 hour of his time, and we have so much questions being thrown at us from every corner, even on YouTube. Our YouTube channel is also live. Our Facebook is also live. There are questions also that keep coming, but it's quite unfortunate. But we want to assure you that we will bring Lee here some other time because he's very busy, and we know that he has a lot of things to attend to. But last question before you go, Lee. How do you overcome language barrier?
Okay. So in our system, not all positions are what's called language designated. So for instance, in Pakistan, as the public affairs officer there in Karachi, it was not a language designated position. However, our spokesperson position was, and I worked with two female Foreign Service officers who were the spokesperson in Karachi. Before they came, they were provided by what's called Foreign Service Institute Urdu language training. So they got to communicate with those who did not speak English in Pakistan. And so similarly, in this case in Nigeria, I don't believe any position, including mine, is language designated. So we do what we can. We work with at times contract translators when we want to get out a specific message to a specific community that, let's say, doesn't have much exposure to English. That's not just the case here, but any country where I've done public diplomacy work. The times that I did have opportunity to get when my position was language designated was Turkmenistan, Burma, Cameroon, of course, Algeria, the Francophone countries, and then Russia. So for where that particular language is not utilized outside of that country, let's say Turkmenistan and Burma in particular, I was good at the time in speaking it, but now it's been too many years, I've lost it. It is a muscle. But I did learn French and Russian at a young enough age, so I can go back to that instantly. And fortunately, particularly the French is a little bit more international language. So often if like I encounter a Spanish speaker, like, I don't speak Spanish, do you speak French? And then we'll start talking in French. So that's just, that's a vignette answer for you, One.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, please let's put our hands together for Lee. Lee, thank you so much for being on our program. Aita, please, can you just go ahead and give us closing remarks? And if there are announcements,
Thank you.
please.
Thank you very much. We'd like to really appreciate you, sir, for coming on this program. We've all enjoyed the session, the time, and we're hoping to see another diplomat come on this program. And we know that you enjoyed the program as much as we did. So once again, we want to thank you very much. We appreciate all that we have heard from you today. To all our directors, we appreciate your support. Thank you for getting the places ready and people ready. We appreciate all of you. Next week, we are going to be starting our youth development series on volunteerism. And this program is going to be for 5 weeks. We encourage all of you to please participate. The program starts 1:30 p.m. on Tuesday. Also, we also would like to remind you of eLibrary USA. We're still giving people remote access. So please make sure that you get back to your directors and he will give you all the details. Once again, thank you everyone for coming. Hope to see you very soon. And thank you, sir, for coming. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye, everyone.
All right.
Bye.